Welcome back to the Modern Hippie Podcast. I am joined today by Angela Ward, who is a psychedelic doula, a nurse, a coach, former birth doula, and the founder at Guardian at the Gateway. Thank you so much for joining me today, Angela.
Hi there. It's so fun to be here with you.
Yeah, so I have a story about how we met, which I'm just going to share because I'm so glad that you received it well. But I stumbled upon you in your greatness because you make these incredible ketamine playlists on Spotify. And I was sort of in the bath one night and coming out of a ketamine journey and went, who made this playlist that just rocked my world? And went and started looking into you and found you and wrote you this email letting you know that I enjoyed your playlist so much and was freshly coming out of it. So I love getting to know you now because of this. And I know you have excellent taste in music. So
Thank you. Yeah, it was really fun to receive that email from you. I think I got it like right away the next day, and I don't always check my emails that quickly, but uh, I was like, you get it. I love making ketamine playlists. I test them myself. So I work with ketamine personally and like to test drive all of them. And I just think it's kind of an unappreciated approach. Medicine and music blend together so well, but I also think sometimes people have a sense that music should only be like EDM with psychedelics, or should only be Icaros, or should only be this type of flavor. And I think it's really cool to explore different types of music in those spaces. One of the things that I love doing is including human voice. I don't know, which one did you listen to the first time? Was it Initiation? Ketamine Initiation, or was it?
no, I know it was an initiate. I think the first time I went through ketamine flow.
Oh, nice.
And from there, I branched out into initiation. At one point, I actually listened to ketamine mastery. And that was when I knew I had to get to know you because, because there were a bunch of like really hard hitting songs. And I think it was ketamine mastery where I was like, no one is going to enjoy this unless they've done ketamine more times than I have. And as many times as I have, because I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Like, well, the reason I asked, there's a couple like the ketamine training, or gosh, one of the more recent ones just has a lot of voices from around the world that aren't speaking English language, but just have sounds. And ketamine can be so mechanical, or can be really inorganic oftentimes. But I've noticed it can also be quite warm and quite nurturing and quite connected to plants and all kinds of you can travel so beautifully with that medicine. So it's fun to see what other qualities can emerge in the space depending on what music's included. And my experience with ketamine is it has so much energy in it that it's helpful if it has something to latch onto, like some rhythm or some dynamic energy in the music itself, instead of just kind of a la 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 la, like very mellow play mellow spa-like playlist. But that might be appropriate for someone when they're first starting out or they're nervous. Having something that's really interesting to listen to and really good stuff that's really good. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah. Brings a lot of joy to my practice to do that. So I'm glad you like them and found them useful.
You have done your work well.
I've got more in the
And
works. We'll get there.
yeah. And it's interesting to hear you say that. When I was first introduced to ketamine, I was playing sort of more of this deep tribal house music with it. And I noticed early on that it's just, there were so many images and things that would sparkle and pop because there were so many little hints of notes in the sounds in the music, because it had like this kind of driving beat to it. But I also, it was like a train wreck coming off of it. And it wasn't until I discovered other music that I realized like the come down from ketamine could be really soft and gentle
Yes.
instead of what had been a train wreck. And then I think the first time when I used your playlist, I dabbled in other artists and things, but that was the one that was like, oh, I'm just being held so warmly and
Mhm.
so nicely, and like it's a becoming a much friendlier ride where I could really get some important messages from what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not opposed to EDM, don't get me wrong. I think sometimes it's
Yeah.
fun to have that in there for sure. But if it's just one constant palette through the whole thing, it can be fatiguing because you are listening to every little thing oftentimes with ketamine. It's
Hmm.
all very present. Uh, but one of the things I really love to do with ketamine playlists is you're so neuroplastic with that medicine that I love kind of implanting like really positive messages in the coming down phase. So I'm trying to remember in initiation, there's that Eastern Sun song, which is just sweet, I think. There's another one that has this song called The Art of Self-Forgiveness. Have you come across that playlist yet?
Oh no, what's
Oh,
the
I gotta share
title?
that one with you. It's so good because you just go through this whole expansion and exploration and maybe confronting some things about yourself and in that soft landing phase, there's this beautiful song called The Art of Self-Forgiveness by Future Primitive, and I can't remember the woman that sings it, but it's like it can kind of like permeate you in such a beautiful way and have you work on your own self-forgiveness and compassion, which I
Mhm.
think is so potent in healing with this medicine. When you're in a place where you can make new connections and see things in a different way, having beautiful things support you in doing that is just the secret, I think.
It is. It's
The
the
secret.
secret sauce.
Keep it beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like you're right. Like Icaros are lovely. They have their place. Everything has its place. And I've really been enjoying that as I dance through your playlist. Like I did the serpentine one the other day. And that one is very full of like belly dancing style kind of music. And um that was great. That was spot on.
Thank you. I'm really glad you liked it. Yeah, I belly danced for a very long time and was
Oh.
definitely missing it. I started belly dancing in 1999 and performed and put on shows and stuff. And moving into psychedelic care, I really kind of moved away from it in the last, I don't know, since the pandemic at least. And I was like, oh, this stuff is so good. I got to add something. And I've heard a lot of positive feedback from that. I think because There's this there is the movement that comes with ketamine, although I've heard of people using it with other medicines as well, but there's something that can get into our bodies and bring our spirit into the way that we inhabit ourselves and allow ourselves to feel rhythm or feel the way that breath moves, the ways that we can be in pleasure in our bodies, and that's just was really what brought that one in. I'm
Mm.
glad you liked it.
Oh, it's so cool to know you were a belly dancer before too. Like that now it has like extra significance, that song.
Yeah. Yep, that's why it's there.
So where did your journey with psychedelics begin?
Oh my goodness. Started a long time ago. I had my first psychedelic experience in high school. I think I was a junior in high school and I had an experience, I think with psilocybin the first time. I can't remember at this point. It was either psilocybin or LSD. Pretty sure it was psilocybin. I was blown away in that experience of like, oh, things are not what I've been told.
Yeah.
Those trees are talking to me, like, not in a scary way, but, like, they're so alive and vibrant and dancing. Uh, it just felt very natural in a lot of ways for me. I experimented with psychedelics before I ever smoked pot or drank alcohol, which is interesting. I don't think a
Wow.
lot of people do that, but I always felt really connected to it. I spent some of my formative years as a raver, which was really an incredible way to connect to those medicines and some of the community that shows up in movement and dance. And it was also so incredible to have these really transcendent moments on the dance floor with psychedelics on board. I mean, I'm now as a grown up, I would be like, kids, be very careful with that kind of thing. But I don't know. Things seemed safer back then. They probably weren't, but they seemed safer. But you get on the dance floor and it would be like this group unity mindset being shepherded by the DJ who could really tap into what everyone was kind of feeling collectively and riding these ebbs and flows of ups and downs together. Uh, and then also becoming like the hollow bone that the dance moved through was something that happened.
Mm.
It was so incredible to kind of step back from being so self-conscious or comparative or just having a lot of freedom in that space. But being in those environments as well, I also saw a lot of harms occur. I saw people using ketamine, actually. I was not interested in ketamine at all because I saw people in K-holes lying on the floor and people, like, kinda stepping over them and not sure if they were okay, which is scary. I've definitely seen people freak out in those environments or bad drugs going through the community. There
Sure.
also got to be more of the crystal meth going through the community that was
Mm.
about the point I stepped away from it. But it did teach me a lot about some harm reduction in the ways that people started caring for one another in those environments, which it just is really lovely. But what really brought me back to it was I had a child that was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. She had a very bad congenital heart defect, and she died when she was 6 months old, which was tragic.
Mm.
Her angel wing anniversary was yesterday, as a matter of fact, and she'd be 20. It's kinda surprising. Um, and that was just I was diagnosed with PTSD after that. It was just tragic depression, very, very difficult period in my life, and I worked very hard to get out of that place. And at one point in my healing journey, some friends came to me and asked if I might participate in a DMT ceremony. I'd heard of DMT because I'd been a fan of Terrence McKenna since a young adult, a young person, young psychonaut, and I'd always thought, well, if it's the right people, I think I would say yes to that experience. And so said yes to this experience. I did not know it was 5-MeO DMT. I knew nothing about
Oh.
5-MeO DMT. And I went to this ceremony that was pristinely held by a very beautiful, skilled practitioner with just this incredible ceremony that built in so much safety, not only just psychological safety among the people that were in this ceremony, it was a small ceremony, but also an energetic container. Like he really brought in his own method of like creating an energetic bubble, really, for us to be held within. And that experience it changed my life. It changed my life. Um, I went first because I was afraid if I went second or third or fourth, I would be too scared to go. But I went, and it it's a long story. But what I can say is part of that journey really imbued me with a sense of profound, deep, universal love that was recycling through me and like really recharging my love battery. I think I felt so depleted, and just breathing in this love and recycling it was so potent. And in that journey, I found what I thought was my grief for the death of my child, but actually over the years, it's really revealed itself to be that place within me where I stuff like shame and grief and all the yuckiness of me. And in the ceremony, my impulse was to just start screaming, I love you into that space. I love you. I love you. I love you. And after that, like, I just felt so different. I felt so much better. And I still struggle. I still have like anniversary times and I feel grief or overwhelm or frustration. But there was something about that experience that made me feel like why is this type of work not available to people that are really suffering and in pain? So I felt strongly that I needed to find a way to leverage my privilege as a nurse to help bridge the gap and bring this into more conscious, safe use and awareness. So that's when I started pursuing my education in psychedelic care. So that's how I got involved. Kind of a long story spanning a long period of time, but yeah.
No, a beautiful story, and thank you for sharing it so openly and vulnerably. I think there's a lot that I know, like, people identify with in there, and for instance, the grief, and we rarely do things ceremonially for grieving. I mean, we have the funeral, but the like an actual letting go of the energetics and healing ourselves. It's an important time, and how
Yeah.
beautiful the medicine found its way to you in that time and moved through you the message of like repeating the one thing to return to that we all are, right? Love, love, love.
Yeah.
So what a
Yeah.
beautiful transmission.
Yeah. It's easy to forget. But when I remember, it's like, oh, yeah. I think what's incredible about it is once I had the eyes to see it, like once I had access to that sensation of however people want to describe it, cosmic love, God, whatever, I can see it in so many other places. And I've seen it with other medicines, but I've also seen it through other practices or sometimes just being present enough to have it emerge, which is really, really cool. I think that's one of the things that I've loved working as a nurse with people in expanded states. As a birth birth worker, labor and delivery nurse, I worked a lot with families that were losing their babies that had either stillborn births or were incompatible with life diagnosis, and being able to witness the ways people love in the middle of their profound pain. It's such a unifying and humbling experience. I don't know, who was it that said, "Be kind, for we are all fighting a great battle." Can
Mhm.
just it just I see it so much in the people that I work with, even even now, I'm not working in the hospital any longer. And I think that's a lot of what I witness with my clients that I work with currently is their struggles. And really, I think one of the things that psychedelic care offers is an opportunity to be with someone in their suffering and to love them through in that space and to welcome what's coming up for them and allowing the just allowing it to to be with rather than trying to fix or change or do something to. Just allowing and really trusting that that person's gonna find their way through when they're held with love and compassion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I asked you about, um, you used the term psychedelic doula, and I
Mhm.
was like, that is a really beautiful term I hadn't considered for exactly what it is that we do. How did you arrive at that? And so,
Yeah.
how did you arrive at that?
I was a birth doula before I was a labor and delivery nurse, and that's even kinda how I came up with the game name Guardian at the Gateway. I feel like there are places in our shared human experience that tap us into that place outside of our embodied lived experience, our consensus reality, and birth is one of those places. Death is one of those places, and psychedelic experiences are one of those places. Healing journeys are oftentimes too. There's something in in my training as a birth doula, the intention is to follow the birthing person's lead and to trust her wisdom in their wisdom in finding the communion with the life they're bringing earthside. Like they're literally forming someone into physical manifestation for reals, man.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. And being around people who are birthing, they're in such a non-ordinary state of consciousness. They're just so
Mm.
expanded. There's also something that taps into ancestry in birth. Mothers after like going back, 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 back with these hands supporting from so far back. It's a trippy space to be in. And the role is really to follow, support, help, help that person trust their process, even if it's difficult. Like each contraction is hard, but it's not going to last forever. And I find that so similar with psychedelic cares that people don't need someone to tell them what's happening to them. They need to trust that what's happening, that they're safe, this what's normal. They need skilled providers that can notice when things could be going off the rails a little bit, as far as maybe medically or like we're moving into territory that maybe needs some redirection, safety,
Mhm.
safe rails, but really can trust their riding the struggle, right? Riding through the struggle and finding their resolution and meaning that it means to them, not the meaning that it means to me. That makes sense. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
felt like birth is was such a great teacher in that. And death is too. It has a similar people are transcendent as they diffuse out or they diffuse into being earthside.
It's such a beautiful process. And I think you completely nailed it. Like that as a psychedelic doula, you walk with that person, you hold the safety that is so important. And I worry sometimes if some other places like the big centers and things, if they're just a little lacking perhaps in that same capacity to sit with someone. And so what you do is so beautiful and so
Mhm.
unique. And like I kind of want to adopt that term myself.
Please feel free.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I it's so tricky, right? Because working as a nurse and working in birth particularly, one of the things that's so interesting is the sense that you develop being that close to a process that's very normal. Really, birth is so normal. We've just made it a medical emergency, which it's really not, right? But knowing the stages of the journey where the nurses on the floor would be like, well, she seems like she's around this phase in her labor, or she's going to start pushing soon, or they just would get kind of this embodied sense of what was happening.
Mm.
And I feel that's really similar with the psychedelic experiences. The Voyager is going to go through a process. Regardless of the medicine, they're still going to have the kind of launch phase. They're going to have the expanding into the peak experience. There's going to maybe be turbulence. There's going to be kind of this coming down arc that varies from medicine to medicine and person from person. But being close to the experience, we get a felt sense, uh, and a way that we become more familiar with the territory. I've heard people say psychedelic Sherpas too, kind of, which,
Yeah.
getting to know that the hike, getting to know that what the territory looks like. I I think one of the things that's really missing, I think, is these training programs and centers don't really have any kind of apprenticeship model. I think some cultures have apprenticeship models built in historically, right? People that are working with ayahuasca and such. But in the US, if you've done a training program and you've sat for 3 ketamine sessions, you're considered a guide or whatever. And not to dismiss any of that. I think people have a heart for serving and probably have a lot of skills they bring to that space, but there's something about being with and close to the experience over and over again that gives us a greater opportunity to know the field, know the territory, and not to project our experience onto it, but to maybe be more reassuring, like, "Oh, this is where they might be encountering some more challenging stuff," or, "This might be a place where they're needing more peace and quiet," that kinda thing.
Yeah. One of my mentors even suggested, you shouldn't even be trip sitting for someone until you've sat with the medicine 50 times yourself.
Okay, can I get controversial with that then?
Oh, okay. Yeah, please.
I love playing devil's advocate. I'm not sure where I fall with this exactly, and I do think there is absolute value in experiencing psychedelics to know it from the inside. And as a nurse, I have got to acknowledge that I have seen incredible labor and delivery nurses that have never given birth. I've seen every single hospice nurse I know has never died. So I don't I do think there's some validity to it, and I also think there are some people that can be called to being in service in that way that can learn it without being in it themselves. Um,
Mhm.
they might have bring in a different empathic quality or sensitivity, or maybe they can't participate in medicine for health reasons, things like that, but they still have a great capacity for being close and caring in those spaces. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a I'm not a yes or no, but I think there's lots of ways to approach it.
And I think you're absolutely right, especially with regards to something specifically like trip sitting, where the whole objective is really that the person comes and is just in the house while the other person takes the medicine. They're not involved unless something goes really astray.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think for facilitators, it's a bit more important to have had lots of experience within the medicine. But you're absolutely right. So many beautiful humans with clear intentions and intuitive abilities that can get step in there and help.
Yeah.
And
And how do
you've
we
been
get
developing.
experience, right? Sorry to
Mhm.
interrupt, but how do we get experience in a culture where we can't technically, legally, especially for those people with licenses, do work like that? That's one of the challenges, I think.
Yeah. Ugh, such a loaded statement too. It's like Oregon went and legalized it, and then what does that even mean? And they've been trying to figure out what that means and how to make that work. But then the varying degrees of the spectrum too of what kind of facilitator do you want to be? There's the clinical types, the shamanic types, and they're at opposite ends of the spectrum. So getting
That makes
training
me think
for.
of something that I think you're onto, though, is maybe not necessarily sitting with the medicine. There is something about doing our own work that's essential to being close to people in these experiences. So, if a clinician or whoever is supporting someone in these states and they've never done their own shadow work, they've never looked at their own trauma, they've never worked on detangling from their triggers or any of that, then they're definitely not prepared to be in that environment. And I would argue that a lot of people that are trained in Western healthcare models come from a pretty traumatized background. Uh,
Mhm.
Frontline responders through COVID have really been struggling. And yet, those are the people that have such a hunger for being providers, psychedelic providers. There's got to be some way to do your work of healing in order to better serve.
Well, and you've put together a program. You have a program that helps certified people to become doulas as
Mhm.
well. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I founded the Psychedelic Doula Academy kind of based on these principles of being with. It's the Psychedelic Doula Academy is geared towards people that are generally non-traditional care providers. So people that are have a heart for healing, are very interested in this work, but likely could not or would not want to go to another program that requires many letters after their name. It's oriented in the framework of harm reduction and safety, as well as education, so that a doula, much like a birth doula who can support someone through whatever type of birth they want to have, a psychedelic doula can support someone through whatever psychedelic experience they're choosing to have. Some people are choosing to experience psychedelics through doing legal ketamine work, going to an IV clinic, and not having a lot of integration, preparation, support, that kind of thing, to people that might be traveling out of country for, extended psychedelic experiences, or who may be working with things within the country, either underground or in recreational, not recreational, recreational activities. A doula is not there to judge or criticize, but rather to meet people where they're at and help keep them safe and make wise choices about the experiences that they're having. So that's the idea behind the Psychedelic Doula Academy. It's a three, six, 3 12-week program. So it's 3 12-week sessions. And the first level is just kind of a foundational overview of being with someone through the expanded state and what qualities you need to bring in yourself to do the work well, including like, what do we have to do to be nourished so that we can be fully present for someone through their journey? And we also speak a little bit about some ethical considerations. There's a lot of problems in the psychedelic underground, particularly. There's some beautiful work being done for sure, but there's also lack of oversight and community. So it runs the gamut of people doing stuff. Like I've heard of people dosing people the most crazy ways, or while people are on contraindicated medications, or just don't have a sense of how to keep people safer in this way. So that's really my hope with the program, is to help people help other people and develop a safe community to talk about that.
Beautiful. I love how that shows up to be of service for the community, and especially in the way that you've come to practice yourself. I can see a lot of that trickling down through how you would teach and inspire others to be in a really responsible position of facilitating that change for. And someone asked me the other day, why do some people have just like awful medicine experiences? And I shared with them that I think it's because those people perhaps haven't always been doing the work on themselves, or they've shoved things down really deep. And then when the lid gets blown off the box, they're not sure how to go into it. And then there's fear. And then there's, the fear triggers and triggers more experiences. Whereas having a doula like yourself there could be right in there with them and be like, okay, well, let's bring some love back into this. Let's
Mm,
contain. And it's really beautiful that you're offering that.
Thank you. I think one of the other things that's really missing in psychedelic care is aftercare. And that's not uh, something I've seen commonly taught. Like, people always wanna be there for the big expanded state experience. Like, they wanna be there for the moment the baby comes out, like, it's like they wanna be there for the peak moment.
Mhm.
But really, it's the preparation and integration and care provided for someone through that process that helps them come back to themselves. So if they're not well prepared, the likelihood of them having a quote bad experience is higher, especially if they don't understand basics of set and setting and ways to create an environment that's going to support them. Also, around, can we get rid of this bro concept of the more drugs you do, the better, the higher the dose, the better? Like, let's like low and slow, take it easy. We'll get there if you want to. One thing we always used to say at the hospital is it's better to ease the baby's head out than run back to the OR for a C-section. So let's just breathe our way through it a little easier, huh? Um,
Mhm.
and but there's also this component. I think when people are out there in their own minds, or they're wrestling with some concepts they've never looked at, they really need to be met with someone who is going to care for them afterwards. Like, as they're landing, helping them just get nourishment or comfort, or bring in beauty. Such a powerful healer. Beauty is such a potent healer in this space. And we're bringing in pets like our beautiful dogs, or yeah. So let them have a sense of connection, and again, just that being with rather than doing to, and having a touch point throughout. So even after they've had their peak experience, they have someone that they can come back to and just process with, or walk in nature with, or something like that really helps them gather themselves back. In a Mexican midwifery model, there's a concept of wrapping the mother with a cloth called a rebozo after birth. And the idea is that we're closing the bones after she's been wide open. And I love that feeling with a psychedelic experience of like, how can we gather the bones back in the way that feels like nourishing and whole, rather than trying to force something back into place or put yourself back together really hard because you decided to take 5 grams of mushrooms in the morning and then you have to go out to dinner with your family at 6, or something.
Yeah. Mistakes.
Yes.
They happen.
We should do a whole thing on like how to have a bad trip.
Ugh. Yeah, that would be a funny video. So easy.
Totally.
And so you're also building something else, a program you were telling me a little bit about that
Yeah.
helps nurses sort of look at all the different
Yeah.
variations, what it means to be a nurse. Tell me about that program.
It's so exciting. So just to be clear, the Psychedelic Doula Academy is for anybody, really, as long as I feel like we vibe. But I am in the process of creating a psychedelic nurse coaching training program with another amazing psychedelic nurse named Stephanie Van Hope. Um, we have an initial offering we're developing. I think the working title right now is Return to Roots. And it's a smaller program, but really introducing nurses specifically to our lineage as plant medicine carriers, truly. Like, some early roots of nursing included some concepts that blend beautifully with psychedelic care. I mean, Florence Nightingale, our nursing grandmother, argued for like light, beauty, cleanliness, a sense of like nature and getting connected to the earth more so. Uh, so, Return to Roots is going to be an exploration of one's own personal earth based spiritual practices, introducing concepts around psychedelic nursing care and kind of blending that towards nursing specifically. So, I'm really excited for that one. It's kind of starting to blossom on its own, and we'll see what's going to happen with this first offering. Um,
Cool.
Personally, I think nurses are like the bridge builders between the underground and the clinical in a lot of ways. I'm a holistic nurse, that's my training. And there's so much more to our wellness than just biologic factors, of blood pressure and glucose and all that. Like, where's the sense of spirit and well-being connected to community, connected to so many more pieces that make us whole humans. So, yeah, that's really the orientation we're coming from. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful build. And I love that you tie in the elements of the natural world and some sacred world with it. Like, because the medicine is all around us. And
Yeah,
oftentimes, there'll be a poisonous plant, there'll be the medicinal antidote to it right next to it. And
yeah,
how often, I think, in more Western traditions, we forget to look for the simpler causes. And
yeah.
so I love how you point out that responsibility of nurses to be the bridge and
Mhm.
to bring about more of those wellness, to tie them together.
Yes, yes. And I think that's my specialty because I'm a nurse, but I think it relates to all psychedelic interested practitioners that if we don't have some sense of exploring that territory ourselves, not necessarily with the plant medicine, but maybe, but understanding like personal practices that give our own work meaning and they give us our own sense of energetic cleanliness, energetic hygiene, I guess, ways to relate to one another in a way that feels really rooted and ethical. Uh, I think that translates across the board for practitioners and, people like yourself. I think that's why we vibed so much when we first talked is like, I feel like you are doing the work really clean. You're clean in this and you have a big heart for serving and that, you can teach someone skills, but if they don't have that quality, it's really hard to teach the quality of caring, and of love. They don't already have that. So more,
That's
more of it.
such a big statement. You can't really teach the quality of caring. And exactly. And I think that's luckily what this medicine helps people to reconnect with is that sense of care, that sense of love, that feeling safe to love, feeling safe to care.
Mhm.
Having more of
And you can't care if you don't feel care. I think a lot of my nursing companions are really going through the motions. They came into the work because they care a lot about people and they're burdened by a lot of late stage capitalism in healthcare and a broken healthcare system.
that.
So our hopes with Return to Roots is to really re-inspire healthcare providers to like get more generative, to grow that sense of care, not to be performative, to put it out on someone else, but to like, it's like it'll blossom. It's easy to care for people when you feel resourced and when you feel full and it's a service rooted in love. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's always one of my biggest teachers, as well as that exact lesson. Like, no matter what you do, you're always better at it if you are well laughed, well loved, well eaten, well slept, well worked, well like worked out. Like, well, if you are just well, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's sports, but like,
Dancing your ass off.
yes, belly dancing your ass off.
That's right. Yeah, we need it. Absolutely.
And so, what's a session like with you? Like, when someone actually comes in to take the medicine with you for their first time, what's your
Mm.
process?
Well, I would say that a lot of people come to me already on a laundry list of contraindicated medications. And because of the way that I'm able to work with ketamine, they'll, I'll often work with people that come to me through referrals in the community, like other healthcare providers that are like, I can't prescribe them anything else. Can they do ketamine with you? So I have a program where I'll move someone through a process doing ketamine assisted nurse coaching that will often help them start to take better care of themselves to get that level of attention that they need in different areas of their lives while they may be stepping down off some of those medicines that don't work with other psychedelics. And that's under their prescribing providers, supervision, of course. And then luckily I live in an area where we have some decriminalization. So if someone is interested in working with other medicines beyond that, I find that working with MDMA is a little nicer place to start. A lot of people I work with have trauma, and I find that that is a lot of trauma happens in a lack of relation in ways which people weren't met. I find psilocybin just incredible, and it's a more it's less relational. It's more relationship to the mushroom itself than interpersonal with another person. So usually people will start with MDMA, and I've sometimes been rooted a bit more in internal family systems work, parts work. We'll do a little bit of like getting the roots of what might be motivating behaviors. I'll do a lot of work in the preparation and integration phase to help get a sense of what builds resilience, what strengthens someone's well-being. My role as a nurse coach is not really to examine, you know, the roots of their trauma. That's oftentimes something better in the wheelhouse of a therapist, working with a therapist, but it's welcome in our conversation. Um, so we do a lot more strengths-based processing, and sometimes in ceremony, that might even look like some movement practices or doing some energetic releases of some kind. One of the great things about being a nurse is I have a license to touch. Like, I'm very comfortable with hands-on with people in a very ethical, safe way. Sometimes there's just some pressure holding that needs to happen in the experience. And then I just support them through some integration processes. And then if they want to explore some other medicines that they feel like they're choosing, just continue to develop a trusting relationship so they feel safe to go as deep as they want and within a safe context, right? Make sure that they're in an environment that's safe, that they've set it up to be a beautiful space, and that I'm just there as support to help them work through their process. It's really cool. I've had some people I worked with for a while at a recent ceremony that was co-facilitated with my beloved, and this client we'd worked with for a couple years, and he was just like, I need some support right now. He knew the context that he needed support around, and we just created the container, and he used us as the support he needed and asked us to show up in different ways or behave in certain ways or speak to him in certain ways. He really led. I mean, they talk about in psychedelic care the inner healing wisdom. His inner healing wisdom was so present about what he needed, and we had such a good working trust that we'd built for so long that he could use us exactly as he needed from his own wisdom to create his own healing. It's just that is like the coolest when that happens. My favorite.
yeah, the wisdom inside those medicines is just unprecedentedly brilliant. The ways that we get guided to know exactly what's happening, know what's coming out of us, know what the cause is. Um, I personally have been going on a several day quest trying to understand what's happening, sort of unlocking I'm having at the moment.
So
Um, I had a channeler tell me I'm sort of on the brink of another spiritual awakening. And I'm like, what does that mean? But
what does that mean?
well, that's what I was questioning. I was like, oh, maybe it's subtle. Like now all of a sudden I'm like super intuitive and I wasn't before. Or, I mean, not that I wasn't before, but like now it's just all of the skills all the time so clearly or something. Um, but for me, it's been the medicine has been guiding me to unlock and open up certain parts of the body. And in that unlocking to straighten out the spine, I was getting spinal adjustments to myself on the floor somehow, just laying there and just like slowly stretching. And then, click, click, click. Like I didn't know that that was so unstraight. And eventually, the medicine is very interesting because there were some stories being told along the way by the medicine of me being like, oh, is this what we get to do at this level? And it would sort of take my object of focus as a way to kind of guide me to go on a quest to accomplish what was next, if that
Very
makes sense.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it started with a lot of lower level, lower consciousness kind of quests, but ultimately I've been following them. And then, you'd fail and you'd get kicked out again. I would get kicked out.
What can you share what medicine you were working with?
I was working with ketamine and cannabis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's
I
some
mean, it's
real
kinda like a
special
video game
intelligence there.
sometimes. Like, you have to up level through it. That's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this was so interesting to be doing it inside my body because there would be times I would circle back. So each day I've been sitting with maybe like 3 or 4 doses and it would kind of guide me and I'd go, there would be something that would happen while I have a technique I'm developing that started to unlock the whole process. And my body just started to move as if it pre-programmingly had to hit these certain stances and muscle stretches and things in a certain way in order to like unlock the next level. And
Totally.
yeah, and when I would get somewhere and I would fail, and largely I would fail because my body was out of alignment. My body was, I stretched things in the last 2 days that are years and years old out of me.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
and
so
then so
cool. That's so cool.
but eventually, sometimes I'd circle back 2 and 3 times to a same, like, spot where I had failed, and then start to realize, "Oh, wait, I remember I did this that time, and now I'm gonna do this." And then I would, like, slowly get through the levels that way.
Very
And
nice.
yeah, so it's been opening up my entire light body, and
Wow.
that's, wild, and I'm fresh out of saying this just still processing my actual emotions and things around it, but to
Yeah.
see inherently the images inside of me of what the light body represents, to see the gold and the white snake wrapping around the head and down this, wrapping around the energies, and to see each chakra where it was, and to be able to go through. And as I realized they each had their own color when I would break through them,
Oh,
and
wow.
realizing where the throat chakra got snapped open, and then we're into the third eye, and I missed the crown today, so I have to go back again tomorrow. But
That's incredible.
there's
You know,
and I
that
feel it is the
you do?
thing.
What are you
Oh,
feeling?
this like rush of energy, this yeah, it's mainly a rush of energy and things like just being blasted wide open. Um yeah, but these were never symbols that, I used to always look at those drawings that they have of the chakras and things. I'm like, who came up with this shit? Like, who saw it? And I guess enough people
Crystal.
agreed on it. Yeah. I've been trying to see auras my whole life. I'm much more, I feel things much more than I see them.
Mhm.
But to have this guided tour and see it, I was like, oh shit, that's why like yoga poses, I get why they work. I got walked through some sun salutations in the middle of it. And like, I haven't done yoga in maybe like a year or two. Like,
That's
yeah.
so amazing. You know, that's one thing that I think on the surface, psychedelic care is, and re-emerging in our culture as, you know, dressed in mental health care. But really, I think it's a way to help us see some of the skills that we really can have if we pay attention and engage with our own energy. Our energetic bodies totally resonate with that. There's also something about journeying for others and being able to do the ancestral pieces or work some of the lineages that way, which are so potent. Um, I want to ask you some questions, even though this is your podcast. I'm asking you questions. Have you read the Magdalene manuscripts?
I have not. What's that?
I I might encourage you to check it out. I won't tell you the details, but it does talk about working with that Kundalini energy, I think is what we could easily call that, of running
Mhm.
energy through our bodies and a lot of it up through the chakras. It's just easy to talk about it in those frameworks because it makes sense. But there's a there's a fundamental truth present that comes from multiple sources that are speaking to these similar things. And there's something about that energy that one can build through themselves that is really amazing. And ultimately, that's what's going to help you serve people better, is being able to
Yeah.
be resourced in that way because it opens so much information. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
cool.
Yeah, I had an interview with a client yesterday who asked me, why do you keep going back to the medicine? And I was like, well, as a facilitator, I want to read every single page of the textbook. I want to know every single avenue, nook, and cranny. And we're always in there making new discoveries ourselves, too. So it's like the
Yeah.
more that we've been in there and explored, the better equipped we are to handle everything that comes up for everyone else.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
It's very cool. I mean, I do think that's super important to spend some time mindfully. And I mean, mindfully is not the right word, but with intention, doing exploring medicine with intention, rather than just, well, my friends are doing it, or I guess I should, and working on a practice with it. There's just so much wisdom the body carries and so much information that can come through. Yeah, check out
Mhm.
that book. I'd be curious what you think if you read it.
Okay. I will. The Magdalene
The
Diaries? Which
Magdalene manuscript.
manuscripts? Okay.
I think it's Tom Kenyon, I think. Yeah. It's yeah, just give it a chance.
Okay. I would be
It's
happy to.
channeled. And someone told me about it. They're like, and I got it, and I was like, "This is channeled. I don't know how I feel about it." And it was actually really quite potent. So
Okay.
yeah, very nice.
I will check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you tonight, getting to know you, getting to share your beauty and you
Mhm.
just have this divine loving energy about you that I find such a gift. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for sharing more time with me. And where's the best place for people to keep up with you?
People can text me, interestingly, if they'd
Oh,
like to. Can I give you my phone number? Guys, all ready? It's 206-278-3395. 206-278-3395. That's always fun. Or they can check out my website, guardianatthegateway.com.
right.
Yeah, I love talking with people. I host weekly office hours. You came to one of them on Wednesdays, 2 to 3 p.m.
Yes.
Pacific time, which it's just kind of an open door. And sometimes a lot of people show up and sometimes one person shows up, but that's just a fun way to just hang out and talk about whatever. I think when you came, we went all over the place with that. That was so fun.
What a
There
delightful
was just a
conversation.
bunch of random people.
Yeah.
It's a safe
And it
container.
was I don't have a lot of people in my inner circle who do a lot of ketamine either, or who have done it to explore the depths that I have. And so it was so great to share stories with you, hear your stories.
Gosh.
And there was another girl in there too. And so I walked away being like, oh my God, I just had community about ketamine
Gosh.
for the first time.
Always happy to talk about it. Ketamine is, I was like, no, don't want to do ketamine. And then I got trained and started working with it and was like, there's a lot going on in here. There's a lot going on in here. Had some pretty
Yeah.
magical experiences with it.
How do you describe ketamine as a medicine?
It's been interesting because I started working with it in 2018, and at the time, there didn't seem to be that much going on in there. There was, like, geometry and colors and stuff, and now it's just so full of imagery for me, and I don't know if that's me or if human consciousness has spent so much more time in ketamine space that we've, like, imprinted ketamine with all our stuff. Because like, psilocybin has millennia of human consciousness imprinting stuff in there, so the imagery has a particular flavor to it, but ketamine was really neutral for a while. Um, I almost hate to describe it because everybody has such a different experience, but for me, I always see there's almost always the ocean floor at night, so dark sand highlighted with, like, neon greens and purples and blues. I always spend time in the canyon at night looking up at a sky, but, like, with rocks surrounding me. Always visit the place that has the amazing green spring trees and a beautiful sky. I really travel around the world seriously, where I'll be at, like, Angkor Wat, or I'll be in a Mayan temple, or I'll be in Egypt, or, like, all of this architecture that's different flavors, which is very cool.
Mm.
Um, but it always has motion. And I'm surprised because when I first started working, there weren't really people or animals there. But as I've spent more time there, there are people. There's a lot of people in there and animals. It's very cool.
Yeah.
I think I told you about the mushroom people are in there for me too. I almost always visit the land of the dancing, walking, whatever mushrooms. They're all very tall and they have little hats. They're always doing a thing. They're either getting ready to go somewhere, or they're coming from somewhere, or they're having a funeral, or they're having a party. There's always activity going on with them. And then one other one, and then I'll stop telling you all of them. I always visit the I always visit the I don't know what to call them. They're kind of like a giant octopus or jellyfish. I'm always below them. They're way above me and they have very long tentacles and they kind of sweep over me like a car wash. They're always kind of like, I
Mm.
always visit them. They're always part of the journey. So it's very
Cool.
interesting. Little vignettes where I stop in these different points. We're like, "Oh, hi. How's it going in there?" How about you? What are
Yeah.
some of the you've had the internal stuff, but do you have any familiar territory that shows up?
Only in the last couple days doing it with cannabis, now that you
Oh,
mentioned that. Um, and now I've had quite a few stops along the way. There's like a tree that's probably from some of the lower chakras because I see them first. There's all these ancient elders in a tree. They all have their own little cutout, and it's like this little tree. And they're like, "Are you ready to go on an adventure? We're gonna up level something else. Like if it's like go on a quest. We're gonna up level something about you." And then I'm like, "Yeah, ready to go on a quest." Um,
that's so cool.
it really has been. That's why I keep showing up right now, and the most incredible, wild things are happening. So yeah, those guys are pretty usual. I have this other one where I've gotten to where I get wound up through a series of sounds I'm making. I get wound up into this triangle position. Um, and then there's like this portal, this triangle portal that opens, and there's someone in there that doesn't seem to take my commands very well. I'm not quite sure what he's up to. We're still working out our relationship. Um,
What's his
yeah,
job?
I feel like he's like commander of some sending. Maybe that's in the blue section. That would make sense. Um, he's like in charge of sending messages. Is kind of what it. He seems like a control center guy.
Wow. So
Yeah.
great. Write it down. Oh my
I
gosh,
know.
so
I was
fun.
taking crazy notes coming out of it and trying to describe as much as I've been recording them as well as to record the sounds that I make because I notice as time goes on, and perhaps this is a warming up of the vocal cords as well, but I'm starting to make multiple sounds at one time. And
Oh, wow.
and that tends to go higher and higher, and then they've been carving higher and higher. So something makes me think I've been really blocked in the flow of my chakras and the flow of my light body. because there's a moment where I can get to it with the sound, and the sounds keep getting higher and higher. So they keep channeling up the light body and kind of carving away space. And then I can start to see the color of the next chakra coming through. So this
That
has
is
been,
so rad.
yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Um, yeah. So I noticed a lot of it was the equivalent of chanting perhaps Om. And I wonder if there's a number of times that you can chant Om where you just break through to another dimension. I mean, that's why the word was created, right? To balance us, to bring us in spiritual alignment. But there's a certain number of times where you can say it, where then I would get the visual of it chipping away the space to the third eye, and then like boom, we blast it off somewhere else. And now everything is stabilized that I had been going through. Like now I can see the light bodies. Now I can control the body. Now with the as long as I keep the hum going, it keeps winding me up into the next positions. And if I stop and drop it, then it gets harder to move on. It's like almost like a heaviness comes over it, and there was such a fluidity. And so you really feel the energetics of, what we keep our attention on. We keep moving forwards.
Yeah.
It's a real interesting process. So that could
It
use a
is
whole
so
podcast
interesting. I'm
episode of
so
it.
grateful to talk to you about that because,
Yeah.
not just everybody can talk about the Om chipping away at the calcifications of your chakras. But
Yeah. I mean, low key, I think it's something I'm meant to teach now that I've gone through it. I think there's something here that I would like to educate others on how to be their own healers. And that's been
mhm,
coming up for me a lot in the last couple of years too. Like the work that I do on myself on psychedelics that I get guided by through the intelligence. Um, Everyone has that available to them.
yeah, yeah. And it helps when you have a relationship with a medicine, you
Mhm.
know. There's lots of ways to have relationships with medicines for sure, but I certainly feel like psilocybin's an ally in a lot of ways. Like when we work together, it's like lovers greeting each other after a long period. We like run together. Oh my God, you're here. We have stuff to do. Okay, ready, let's go. It's like this
Yes.
big conversation. We're doing stuff, getting it done. But that feels so potent to have a sense of trust, really. Trust. I think having had a lot of experiences, even though I know I played devil's advocate earlier, that not everyone has to do all the psychedelics to be good at this work. But there is something about having a deep trust in what's happening with the medicine and ha- yeah, and the spirit of it really, I guess would be the way to say it. The relationship to it.
Really getting to know it. And it's got me questioning too, is some of this the cannabis, perhaps, because cannabis is a really strong plant medicine, but our society has so often overlooked it.
Yeah.
And I think ketamine is this beautiful tool, and when you pair it with an intelligent medicine, then
Hmm.
it really unlocks the wisdom of the other intelligence.
Yeah.
Um, Taken
Yeah. I
together.
think cannabis is very underrated as far as a plant medicine, unfortunately. And it's been kind of created to be a particular type, and it doesn't need to be. It's very much body. So that's interesting now that you point that out, that you're having such an embodied experience. I bet that really is some of the cannabis bringing you into that space.
Mm, good point.
Definitely. Yeah.
I didn't know cannabis was about the body. That makes so much sense. And I've
It's
been saying it for a long
shocking
time. I'm like,
medicine. It's
guys,
energy. Yeah.
yeah.
She wants
Like
to dance and move.
I do ketamine and cannabis, that they're teaching me about all the acupuncture points on the body, and they're showing me when I press my foot what organ like, and seeing the line from where I press on my foot, having it show up in a particular color, run up, and then connect to the organ, like it being in my own body and being like,
Wow.
I need to write this down.
Yeah. Are you getting any body work with ketamine or anything like that? Have you tried
I
that
have
yet?
not. I'm sort of doing my own body work on the floor, but um,
My husband's a body worker and trained in somatic psychedelic therapy. So more relational, physical stuff. And he does ketamine massage. And there's
mm,
something about that. You do a little bit lower dose, so you're still in your body. But the something about touch and music with ketamine, like unpacks layers. This is amazing, like synesthesia happens between touch and music and the medicine that just like it goes into your bones in a way and like
Mm,
really can amplify those stuck places that you're talking about, like where the holding is, but it also brings up the imagery maybe around why you're holding it there and how
mhm.
you can breathe with it or work with it in order to let it melt away. So
Yeah.
you have to come visit me sometime and try it out.
I would absolutely love
I'm
to do that.
volunteering him to give you a massage. We'll
Yeah,
go
I
in
would love
later.
to. Yeah, I used to give mushroom massages, a lot. Now it's just for my clients who are in my soul activation package here, working with me locally. But
Mhm.
the way that we can communicate with the body in a whole different way, it's just so much more apt to being like, "Here, do you see where I'm stuck? Take it, release it from me." Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
powerful.
we think our brain is our nervous system. We kind of forget that it's like our whole self. And there's something about the relational connection being of touch that can like help unwind some of that, like really literally. So cool.
Mm, so
I
many
was
more
just
rabbit holes
reading
we could
how
go down.
I know. Let me just say this real quick about ketamine. I was just reading a little bit more about ketamine, and one of the things that it does, it seems to increase blood flow to atrophy neurons. Specifically in the brain is where it's been studied, but right? I know. So, like, is it possible that even as you're doing this work, as you're envisioning opening these parts of your body, maybe they literally are atrophied because you haven't had your nervous system connect to it in a way that you could feel it or understand it. And ketamine's actually bringing more blood flow to that, to the neurons, literally, so they are awakening and healing. Very cool.
I would totally buy that because when I could see my light body, it's so interesting with my eyes closed, I can see it. And it's almost like little people made out of little lines and dashes that they're connected with these vibrant colors. But um, there were things that I felt like as I was rolling around on the floor, pushing in these super slow moving ways, like it's like floor chi, pushing on parts and allowing them to stretch and breathing into it and not too much, not pushing anything past too hard. Um, but where there were parts that I could feel that completely weren't activated that were coming back online.
Cool.
And
That makes sense.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So just like what you were saying, like moving them a bit and having the ketamine in there to redirect the blood flow probably brought things back online. Like my light body is just shining super brightly, and this experience is certainly interesting.
Love it. So good.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
good. I have no doubt we'll continue to stay connected and talk more. My
Yes,
psychedelic
please.
sister out there.
Mhm. Well, thank you so
Absolutely.
much for joining me, and we will have all of your programs and your links linked up in the show note, as well as the number to text you at. So I highly recommend anyone come and work with Angela. She is just a beautiful soul, beautiful heart, serving beautiful medicine, beautiful love, wisdom.
Mm.
Thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much.